The observation deck of Outpost Sigma-7 looked like a war zone. White synthetic filling drifted through the air like snow, settling on every surface. 4 pillows, standard military issue, lay gutted across the floor, their covers shredded beyond recognition. Lieutenant Mara Keene stood in the doorway, surveying the destruction with the weary patience of a parent who'd seen worse, much worse. "Corin," she said softly, not even turning her head, "put down the bulkhead seal." A guilty chirp echoed from behind the environmental control panel. A small 6-limbed creature emerged, roughly the size of a house cat but covered in iridescent scales that shifted from blue to purple in the low light. Between its rows of needle-sharp teeth, it held a rubber gasket meant to keep the station's atmosphere from leaking into the void. Corin was the smallest of the 4 Velhari cubs currently under Mara's care, orphans from a colony raid 3 weeks prior. The Velhari were humanity's newest allies in the war against the Kresh Dominion, and these cubs represented something precious, hope for a species on the brink of extinction. They also represented the single greatest threat to Mara's sanity. "Drop it," Mara repeated, crouching down and extending her hand. Corin's crystalline eyes, all 4 of them, blinked in sequence. The cub's tail coiled defensively, but after a moment, the gasket tumbled from its mouth onto Mara's palm. "Thank you." Mara slipped the gasket into her pocket and glanced at the chronometer on her wrist. 23:47 hours. The cubs had been awake for 19 hours straight. On Velhar Prime, cubs this age would have been in communal dens, surrounded by dozens of adults whose natural pheromones induced sleep cycles. Here, on a remote human outpost, there was only Mara, and she produced no such chemicals. The other 3 cubs bounded across the room, leaping over torn pillows and scattered filling. They chirped and trilled, their scales flashing in distress patterns. Mara recognized the signs: overtired, overstimulated, and utterly unable to settle. She'd tried everything the Velhari liaison had suggested. Dimmed lights, white noise generators, even playing recordings of adult Velhari sleep songs. Nothing worked. The cubs grew more agitated with each passing hour, tearing apart anything soft they could find, as if trying to build a nest that their instincts demanded but their reality couldn't provide. Commander Hayes had already sent 3 messages, asking when she'd have the cubs under control. The Velhari delegation would arrive in 2 days to retrieve them, and the condition of the outpost and the cubs would reflect on humanity's capability as allies. Mara couldn't let that happen. She walked to her quarters, the 4 cubs trailing behind like goslings following their mother. Her room was Spartan, a bunk, a footlocker, a desk with a flickering holodisplay. But on her bed lay her pillow, not military issue. This one she'd brought from home. Memory foam wrapped in a pillowcase her grandmother had sewn, soft cotton worn smooth by years of use. It smelled like her apartment on Earth, like vanilla soap and old books. Like home. The cubs clustered around her feet, their chirping growing more desperate. Corin climbed up her leg, tiny claws catching in her uniform, and perched on her shoulder. The little cub pressed its face against her neck, trembling. Mara's heart twisted. These weren't soldiers. They were children. Traumatized children who'd watched their parents die, who'd been thrust into an alien environment with no familiar sense, no pack, no safety. They needed more than military protocol could provide. She picked up her pillow, the last soft thing she owned, the last piece of home she had, and carried it back to the observation deck. The cubs followed, curious now instead of frantic. Mara placed the pillow in the center of the torn filling and sat down beside it. The cubs approached cautiously. Corin reached out one small paw and touched the pillowcase, then looked up at Mara with questioning eyes. "Go ahead," she whispered. Corin didn't need to be told twice. The cub burrowed into the pillow, kneading it with all 6 paws. The other 3 joined immediately, piling onto the pillow in a tangle of scales and tails. They pushed their faces into the fabric, breathing deeply. And then something remarkable happened. The cubs' scales began to synchronize, all shifting to a deep, peaceful violet. Their chirping softened into a sound Mara had never heard before, a low rhythmic vibration that resonated in her chest. They were purring. Corin's eyes drifted closed first, followed by the others. Their bodies relaxed, sinking into the pillow as if it were the most natural nest in the galaxy. Within minutes, all 4 were asleep, their purring creating a gentle harmony. Mara sat beside them, running her hand carefully over Corin's scaled back. The cubs' purring intensified for a moment, then settled back into the collective rhythm. It wasn't Velhari pheromones that had finally calmed them. It was scent, human scent. Her scent. The smell of someone who'd kept watch over them night after night, who'd cleaned their messes and bandaged their scrapes and never once abandoned them despite the chaos. The smell of safety. Mara leaned back against the bulkhead, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She'd have to sleep on her bare mattress tonight. Tomorrow she'd need to requisition new pillows for the station. Commander Hayes would probably have something to say about the state of the observation deck. But looking at the 4 cubs sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks, their scales shimmering in soft violet contentment, Mara couldn't bring herself to care. The Velhari delegation would arrive to find their cubs healthy, calm, and trusting. They'd see that humanity didn't just fight alongside allies, they cared for them. They sacrificed for them. They gave up their last piece of home to make frightened children feel safe. Corin shifted in sleep, one tiny paw reaching out to rest on Mara's hand. The cubs' purring never faltered. "Sleep well, little ones," Mara murmured, her own eyes growing heavy. "You're safe now." In the cold depths of space on a remote outpost at the edge of known territory, 4 alien cubs slept purring on a human pillow that smelled like vanilla and old books and home. And the human who'd given it to them kept watch, just as she had every night before, proving that sometimes the greatest strength wasn't found in weapons or shields. It was found in the simple act of giving everything you had, so someone else could finally rest.